Hello there, Lindsay here, the Frugal Crafter, and we're going to take a look at the November Smart Art Box, and I'm kind of excited because it's nice. You get a little surprise every month when you subscribe to Smart Art Box. If you would like some information on how you can get a surprise box of art supplies delivered to your door every month, check out smartartbox.com. I'll put a link in the video description, and you can kind of check it out for yourself. They do ship to many countries all over the world, so chances are your country is included. So this box is pencil drawing. So I'm not going to go through the brochure, but every month you get information about everything that comes in your box, as well as a project that you can follow along with on the back. And then I like to do something different, so you've got a couple projects to choose from. And let's take a look at what they sent today. Okay, let's see. We've got Prismacolor Premier products. Here we have a plastic eraser, an art gum eraser, and a kneaded eraser. I don't really use the art gums very much, but I love white plastic erasers because they're gentle on watercolor paper. And I like the kneaded erasers because you can kind of press down, you can twist into a tiny little point, and you can just erase what you want to. So those will be very, very handy. We have got an empty Derwent number 2 water brush, so I think that's like your medium point. So you can see the point on that. We have some Higgins fountain pen ink. So I guess you could put it here in this brush pen, or you could use it with your fountain pens. So that's kind of cool. I'm almost out of fountain pen India ink, so this is ideal for me. Let's see, we have got a couple loose Derwent sketching pencils, and these look like they are water-soluble graphite. We have medium wash 4B and a light wash HB, so those will be handy. And I don't have those, but I have used water-soluble graphite before, and they're a lot of fun. Very versatile. And here we have Derwent Graphic graphite pencils, and you can see we have a 2H, which is kind of a harder pencil, an HB, which is your good old number 2 school pencil, a 2B, 4B, 6B, and 8B, and those B's kind of stand for black. That means that the lead is soft and dark. So we can take a quick peek at those guys here. Oh, they come in a nice little tin, good for travel. Or you can take your pencils out and make it into a little watercolor kit if that's your jam. And it's got a pencil sharpener in there, so that's nice. You usually don't get a pencil sharpener with your pencil kits. And then what we have in here, it looks like Crescent illustration board. And this is nice because if you do want to do some mixed media techniques, it's thick enough to handle water. You can see it's as thick as a mat board. So, you know, you could do some wet techniques and not have to worry about paper buckling and whatnot. So let's jump right into the tutorial. I decided to use an illustration board, and I actually grabbed the dirtier of the two because one got a little bit of smudge on it when it was in the box in travel, but it doesn't really matter because I knew I was going to kind of tone everything down. I was excited to use the pencils that will turn into kind of like a wash. They're water-soluble graphite. So that's what I'm sketching here. And I'm just going in with the basic shapes. So I did the big oval for the body, then overlapped it with the circle for the head, and put the triangle ears and circle for the muzzle. That's basically how I start off when I'm sketching, because if you make a mistake at this stage of the game when things are, you know, really loose and light, it's really easy to correct it, as opposed to like starting at one end of the fox and working your way down to the other end of the fox and then realizing that you have one eyeball in the complete wrong place. So that's how I like to go about it. And I'm also sketching in the landscape. There's a stone wall behind the fox, and I'll link up the reference photo in the video description so you can have that to follow along with. Now, one change I made from the reference photo, the significant change I made, I put the tail in. I had the tail wrap around the front of the fox because there was kind of some grasses covering up the feet, and I couldn't see how they were supposed to look. And also I thought that was kind of cute looking, and having that big fluffy tail obviously shows that it's a fox, where when I was starting to sketch it looked a little coyote-like. So this kit came with a water brush, so I filled it up with water, and I think it was intended to be filled with ink. We're going to do that a little bit later, but for now I'm just using it for water. And if you're sketching along at home and you have, you know, water-soluble graphite, you know, you don't have to use a water brush. You can go ahead and dip a paintbrush into water. It's not a big deal. I recommend that if you're going to do this technique and you don't have an illustration board, that you use watercolor paper though, because you know, when you are adding water, it can make your paper a little weaker and it can make it buckle. So basically what I wanted to do here was to get some sort of toning on my my illustration board, and by toning it basically means I want kind of like a middle value or something that could be construed as a middle value, so I'm not just working on a plain white background. In fact, something that's really fun to do is to like sketch on a brown paper bag, like a grocery bag, because you've got that middle value brown, and then you can sketch on it with like darker pencils and lighter pencils, and you can do some really fun techniques that way. So here I'm just using my brush to pick up pigment from the tip of the water soluble pencil, and this is the 8B water soluble pencil. I think it's 8B, maybe 4B. It's the softer of the two that come in the kit, and I'm using it kind of like a watercolor, kind of like how I would with a watercolor stick. So there's another thing you can do, because once you've added the water on your board, you don't want to go back in with your pencil on top of the wet paper or the wet board, because you will get super dark lines. It won't blend away. So if you want super dark lines, it won't blend away, like maybe details like cracks between the rocks and the stone wall or something, go ahead and try it. But if you do want it to blend, you don't want to color in over wet paper. So now I'm adding some more toning onto the fox itself. I did use the HB stick because I didn't want it to get super dark. I knew I was going to struggle with contrast between the background and the fox itself, especially not having color, so I can't put in that rusty red of the fox's fur. So I really have to make sure my values are accurate and that I have enough contrast. So by using a pencil that's lighter, so anything that has a B on it, those pencils are going to be darker. Anything that has an H on it, those are going to be lighter. And of course your HB is your regular old number 2 kind of lead. The only difference is this is water soluble. So when I want something lighter, I'm going to go with a harder pencil that has the H on it. H is for hard. So just to give you that little tip there. I dried my sketch and then I went in with an eraser trying to lighten up some areas, but I have to say that once you've added the water to the graphite, at least on these illustration boards, it was stuck good and I couldn't lighten any of it up. So keep that in mind. I actually think that would be a plus if you're layering. So if you did like toned an entire background or did the mid-range of everything in a sketch, then wet it and heat set it, and then you went back and overlaid details. If you did make a mistake, you could erase the overlay details and not touch the stuff underneath. So I think that's kind of a cool thing, and I wasn't aware of that particular quality of these pencils. The other thing you need to keep in mind when you're sketching, especially if you're sketching something that's in full color and you're trying to render it in black and white, is that you need to assign a different value to a different color. So the chest of the fox is white, the back of the fox is red, so I'm shading those areas that would be red a little bit more so that they stand out and have a little bit of contrast from the white. Now there's not a lot of contrast between the fur on the fox, so you just kind of have to look for any shadows as you can find them and adjust your values between colors so that you can depict what you have there. So like adding the darker areas on the face is going to help the brighter areas of the face stand out. So I hope that makes a little bit of sense. So I'm still working with the regular graphite pencils here, and I'm going in and tracing around the little rocks that I sketched just to give them a little more definition. And I think next time I'd probably still do this with the water soluble graphite, because it just is so easy to add shade. You just, you know, take a wet brush and you can move stuff around. And I'm more of a painter than a drawer in a lot of instances, so that is just a little more natural to me. And this is something I'm trying new, and it seems to be working really well. When I sharpen my pencil, instead of turning the pencil, which is what I've always done, which feels so natural, I'm turning the sharpener instead, because I'm so tired of breaking leads. And I mean, these are brand new, so they shouldn't break as long as they were delivered fine, but that is a really soft pencil, and it sharpened really, really well doing that. So that's my tip. Turn the sharpener and not the pencil. I will try to keep doing that myself. I'll probably fail and go back to my old sharpening ways. But what made me think about that was using electric sharpener and having it not break my pencils. So I dumped out the water from my water brush and I added in that fountain pen India ink that came in the kit. And that's something I'm excited to try because I do enjoy working with fountain pens and I like waterproof ink. So this ink can be diluted with water while it's still wet, but once it dries, it's going to be permanent. So there's another product that you can use for layering. Although this is going to be pretty dark on its own, so you just have to know that, you know, it's going to be dark unless you go over it with an opaque lighter media. The reason I went in with this ink is because I was feeling like I lost a lot of contrast and everything was just kind of mushing together in this scene. And I started off with the fox because I was thinking, well, maybe if I just make the fox a little crisper and the details a little sharper, then I won't have to do anything else to the rest of the picture. But you'll see as we progress through the picture that I ended up using it in a lot of different places, because there was contrast all right, but the fox didn't seem like it was part of the scenery anymore, and that wasn't working for me because I wanted a really natural looking scene. I wanted everything to feel like it was in harmony. Like I mentioned before, I'd never used this Derwent water brush before, and I really liked it for the ink. I was kind of afraid at first that it might clog or spit out too much ink or leak, but I really didn't have any issues. Generally, when I've purchased ink-filled brushes in the past, they have like a valve, like a little straw in there to keep them from leaking, and this didn't have that, so I didn't know what the flow would be like or how it would work. Since I started my ink on that little tile to keep it from like dripping on my paper, I can dip back into that if I want to add a little more ink, but I don't want to squeeze. And then I can also spray that with ink like you just saw me do a second ago, and I can lighten up the ink. So I can do a variety of gray shades of washes. I hope that makes sense. So basically I sprayed water on my tile so I could use it like a palette and just pick up water if I just want a subtle gray, or I can pick up more of the black ink if I want a darker gray. Because those bristles, they're real brush bristles, they'll grab that water and everything that you paint right off there will be light, and then as the ink feeds through the brush it'll get dark again. So it just allows you to have a little more variety and not have like a bazillion India ink brushes floating around. So I like that. I like to have stuff that will give me a little more variety. I also like freehand sketching with this brush because like I added some boulders in there and I could add some more layers of trees. It just made it a little more versatile for me. I really like how the muted trees that I did with the graphite and wash are kind of faded off into the distance, and then the crisper trees come forward. I feel like it gives you the illusion of a lot of forest behind the fox, and I just think that's a pretty look. And you just do that with varying your tone. Now here I'm going through and again outlining my stones from the stone wall because I felt like they still needed a little bit more dimension. And then I was thinking I really would like the fox to be brighter. I would like the fox to be lighter value than the stone wall, so I'm kind of just systematically darkening everything behind the fox there on that wall to help push the fox forward towards the viewer. Now you will notice that there isn't as much contrast in the fox's face, and it's not because there isn't contrast there, but graphite's very shiny, and I had a lot of graphite in the face and it was reflecting from my lights. And you'll see a still photo like of the finished painting, and you'll see there isn't, or drawing, and there isn't quite as much shine there, and you can see more contrast. So that's kind of funny to look at because it does look like the face is like really light, but it's just the reflection from the shiny graphite. So here I'm also deepening the tone of that middle grade kind of little valley. There's like kind of like a rolling hill that the fox is sitting on. So I just wanted to get that a little bit darker so it pushes into the background a little bit more. At this point, I grabbed a large flat water brush from my stash and squeezed a little water onto that ink tile where I'd been kind of mixing my ink with my brush that came in the kit, and just added a glaze of dark into the trees to kind of push it back. And then I just added some midtones on the chest of the fox. And there you can see how it looks at the point where I've just used supplies from the box pretty much. Now we're going to get into supplies that I have from around the house and see how I decided to finish off this piece. Starting with good old reliable, my white gel pen, I added a few wispy details around the face, and then I realized I didn't want to get into the detail too much. I did put little glimmers in the eye, but I didn't want too much really detailed stuff yet. So I grabbed some pastels, grayscale pastels, and these are new pastels by Prismacolor, and I started touching up some colors there, adding some of the, brighter grays and adding some details on the rocks. Basically, I just wanted to highlight some of the rocks so they looked a little more textured like rocks do instead of just being a mush in the background. I was also able to deepen the tone of that mid-ground area, as well as some of the shadows on the fox with a darker gray pastel. I definitely don't feel like I need all the colors of gray that's in that kit, but it was handy to be able to grab a few, especially where I'm trying to achieve the red versus white contrast on the fur, but do it in gray. I found that this medium light gray worked really well for representing the value of the red. And so by going over the areas that would have that brownish red fur with that pastel, it really helped the fox feel a little more solid. And part of that's because pastels are opaque versus like the ink washes and the graphite washes I'd been doing, which are quite transparent. and just helped give a little bit of like fullness and body to the box. And I really like the way it turned out. And I think that's one of the cool things about the Smart Art Box is every month you get a new kit of supplies. I think it's really great if you're using it for a homeschool art curriculum or just to expand your own knowledge of art supplies, because you get a month to play with those supplies and then you can mix them with supplies you already have. And you know, every month your stash grows, your knowledge grows, your variety grows, your visual vocabulary grows, and it's just having that kind of something new to try every month that keeps it exciting but doesn't overwhelm you with too many things. So if you'd like to get a box of supplies delivered to your door every month, check out smartartbox.com. They deliver worldwide, not to every country, but to a lot of them, and they do have a full list on their website. I'll link up everything below so you can check it out. And I thank you so much for watching. You can see when I lifted up the picture how dark the face is without the glare. I'll show another photo here at the end so you can see that. Have a happy Thanksgiving, everyone. Please give me a thumbs up if you enjoyed this video. Stay safe, and until next time, happy crafting.